Welcome to Country's Family Reunion 2010. Can you believe it's been 13 years since we had the first reunion? Wow, so many great memories. And yet somehow year after year, the reunions just get better and better. With a whole new group of country music legends, plus all the reunion favorites you've come to know and love, this gathering just might be the best yet. So sit back and relax as we share some stories, songs, moments that'll touch your heart. Welcome to Country's Family Reunion 2010.
Everybody's invited. Everybody's here. Yeah. Well, guys, we worked the makeup people overtime after that performance from Vince Gill and Billy Grammer's great guitar work, Buck Trent's great mandolin playing. But we're all back.
Buck White.
I said Buck Trent because you said Buck Trent to me a while ago. Buck White,
And counting down, 5.
Y'all all know my good friend Jimmy Dean over there, too, don't you?
Very good.
To err is human, folks. Thank you. You know, I said something a while ago about Gene Watson and Dirk Johnson being nominated for the Grammy. The Grammy is, of course, one of the top things that anybody can achieve in music. There's a man sitting among us today, dressed a whole lot better than the rest of us are, who a couple of years ago was given a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Recording Association, NARAS, the people that put on the Grammy Awards, the legendary Mr. Earl Scruggs. Earl, it's great to have you here, man.
My pleasure. I'm enjoying it very much.
But you didn't bring your banjo.
I forgot it.
Earl, how many times have you left the house with that banjo in your life, you reckon?
I don't know, about every time I ever left the house.
But you left it at home today. Well, that's all right. We'll just sit here and say all kinds of nice things about you and all the things that you've done. You took the 5-string banjo and virtually invented a style of music that I mean, a lot of us in here have done, you know, creative things, but nobody's created a style of music.
Well, it's getting so sophisticated, I had to bring it down to size. Grandpa Jones, string bean, all that stuff. It's just getting too high class.
But they didn't play it with the 5th string on it.
You know, they had 5th string. 5 strings. 5-string
Five
band.
strings, but they didn't have that roll like you had.
That
right?
drop thumb.
Yeah.
But it was I thought it was just like a 4, but it was a 5-string banjo.
Yes, yes. Uncle Dave and all of them had 5 strings.
Was that called the clawhammer style or what?
I call it that. Drop thumb, some of them call it, you know.
There was a guy down in the hometown where I was born in Columbia, South Carolina, one of the first people that I ever heard play music, and he influenced you a lot, a guy named Snuffy Jenkins.
Snuffy DeWitt Jenkins.
Yep.
Yeah, he was, I guess, the first 5-string banjo picker of that style on radio years ago. He was very good. He was from...
Now, did you grow up listening to him?
Not a lot, and I'll tell you why. They were on at 1 o'clock every day from WIS in Columbia, South Carolina. Well, we left the field at 11:30 for, we call it dinner. Come home and eat ourselves, and we tried to be back in the field by 1 o'clock, so that's when they came on. So just a few times I was able, if we was well up with the crops, I'd stay and hear maybe the first tune they'd do. And what always knocked me out, Snuffy could play the fire out of the banjo. If they'd do, if he had it tuned in standard G tuning, you know, most of their songs, that 15 minutes would be in G. And then maybe tomorrow, he'd run the banjo up to A, which is 2 frets sharp to G. He'd be tuned up there, and they'd do most of the songs in A. And I thought, my God, put a capo on that thing. And I think what stumped them you have to have something to hook that fifth string down, 2 frets. So I took one of Louise's hairpins and put a hook on it and sharpened it like a spike and put it up there in the A place, put it on A and hook that string, and I was free D and A. And a lot of your better bluegrass tunes are in F and especially A. So that's how my recollection of what I did.
So the whole thing is owed to Louise's hairpin.
That did it.
That's what started the whole DNA thing.
What's the tune in the knob, though? Did anybody else tune the knob? I don't know anything about how you play a banjo, but like tuning the knob down. I never remember anybody doing that till I saw you do it.
Well, that's from coming up with a poor man's banjo. A lot of times it wouldn't hold in tune, and I'd retune it while I was playing the tune.
Oh.
Sometimes tune it too high and too low, and I made me a tune out of it.
That's awesome. Started a whole thing.
One of your best-known songs is a thing that you did then on called the Flint Hill Special. You are from a little town called Flint Hill, North Carolina.
It's actually not a town. It's just a little Baptist church, and was a 2-room schoolhouse there. There is a Flint Hill, North Carolina, down the eastern part of the state that has a post office down there. But we's Shelby Route 3, where I raised.
When did you realize in your life and career early on, when did you realize that you had really come up with something different and that you were going to be able to make a living at it?
Well, I thought I had something different when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I was sitting in what we call living room of the house, where the couch was and where we take people on Christmas, and important company to come visit. I was sitting in there one day. I used to pick with thumb and finger. They call it 2-finger style. And I was playing a tune I still play today called Reuben. I was playing Reuben, and it was almost, if you'd asked me what I was thinking of, I wouldn't remember. I guess you sit around and strum on your guitar, and maybe mine 1,000 miles away or something. And I suddenly realized I had that 3rd finger going, so it just came to me like that. I played that same tune the rest of the week. My oldest brother, Junie, came over on Saturday. He lived about 3 miles over there, and it was in the summertime, and God, I couldn't wait for him to hear me pick. He was coming up the road. I got out on the edge of the porch, and I could pick him straight down the road. Every once in a while, I see him turn his head a little bit like that. He's getting a little whiff of it, you know. I kept playing Reuben, and he came on and across the yard. Porch made like an L. He went up the steps, and it started in the house. He said, "Is that all you can pick?" I had a little tingling go up my spine when he said, "I hadn't tried nothing else." But as luck would have it, what I was
So
doing.
did you start out just by yourself? Did you get in a band after?
No, well, there were 3 of us boys. Of course, Junie was my oldest brother, and he married when I was about 9 years old, so didn't play much with him. But I had another brother, Horace, who was 22 months older than me, and he played a good guitar, so we sat around and play, and sometimes they'd have a little community gathering to try to raise some money for the church or something, and we'd play for little parties like that. They had a place over at Shelby. They had Shelby Ice Cream Company. They made ice cream, like homemade ice cream, but it's on a big scale. And they'd put 2 or 3 flavors on a pickup truck and go around those mills and park, and people would send their 15 cents or whatever the cone ice cream was out. So that's how they made their money, nickel and dime, 15 cents. So I know they give us all the ice cream we wanted to eat to come over there and pick one night. So I had a few big dates like that.
When did you start playing on the radio? When did you first start playing on the radio?
Well, they had a Saturday morning program in the Carolinas. About every Saturday, there'd be bands all over the country. They had WSPA in Spartanburg and one down at Gastonia, called it that Spindle City. And we started, I was with a group, we call ourselves Carolina Cracker Jacks. We'd go down there every Saturday and do a 15-minute or 30-minute radio program. We did that for about a year, and that's when I got a job with Lost John Miller and came to Nashville.
And where did Bill Monroe come into the picture?
We'd come over here from Knoxville. It was just Saturday morning. John had a program here, and a guy that later was our fiddle player, Jim Shoemate, we'd eat breakfast together at Tulane Hotel here in Nashville. It's no longer there. And he is begging me to quit John and come to work with Bill. Well, I'd always heard those Monroes were peculiar type guys, which they were. But anyway, I said, John's paying me $50 a week and paying me every week. But anyway, it wasn't long until John said he's getting off on the road, and I told Shoemate if Monroe wanted to hear me, he'd come up to my room. He came up, and I picked him two tunes. One was Sally Good, and the other one was Dear Old Dixie. So that's when he wanted me to come down to the Opry that night and play with Chubby Wise and Lester and his band, see how. But anyway, that's how. He never did say he'd give me a job. He said, we'll leave at 8 o'clock Monday morning.
You just showed up, huh?
The subject shouldn't stop here. Do you pay anything? What do you pay? I said, pay everybody the same $60 a week. And he said, well, we'll leave at 8 o'clock Monday or whatever it was. And I said, no, I got the flu, I'm sick, and my clothes are in Knoxville. And I'm going to my home in Shelby, North Carolina, and see if I can get rid of this flu. And I can be back next Saturday. So he said, well, come back next Saturday. So I caught a bus and went to Shelby, as my mother used to say, doctored up, and went back.
And the rest of it's history. You and Lester, of course, formed the Foggy Mountain Boys for all of those years, ended up doing a theme song for the Beverly Hillbillies on television.
Yeah.
And you were an actor on that show, too.
Oh, wasn't that good?
Yeah, it was. There you were. Did you enjoy doing that?
That was fun. That was fun. They did that with one camera. Took the Beverly Hillbillies you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
We'd go in Monday, and they called that a reading. Paul Henning was the creator of that show, and we'd sit around like we sit around. Everybody had like a notebook, had everybody's parts in it. And everybody, after we got through introducing ourselves to each other, read through the parts, and some of the words he'd suggest you put a little more emphasis on certain words, and kind of coax us a little bit to be more than just memorizing some words, Anyway, that was a great experience for me to see that work.
Everybody in this room's probably got an Earl Scruggs memory or a story. George, you're from North Carolina.
I heard a story about Earl and Louise traveling through western North Carolina. And the story I heard was that Earl said, Louise, Zeke and Wy Morris,
Yeah.
lived down here in Montreat. I think they had a garage, and they worked.
Wiley had a garage.
Didn't they service Dr. Billy Graham's cars? They took care of his
Well,
cars.
I don't know, but Wiley had a pretty big shop, had a
Yeah.
good business there.
Well, Zeke and Wy were old-time musicians. Way
Real
back.
good and good singers.
Very good ones. The story I heard was you said to Louise, Zeke and Wiley Morris have a garage down here, and I hadn't seen them in years. And she said, we got a matinee in Raleigh or something. She was wanting you to go on. And Earl said, well, you know, they're good old boys. I hadn't seen them in years. Let's just take a little detour and see Zeke and Wiley. And Louise said, Earl, we hadn't got time. Well, Earl stood his ground. They went to the garage, went out of their way, and went down to Zeke and Wiley's garage. And there was one of them. Let's say it was Zeke. He's in there working on the car. And Earl got out of the car and walked over, and Zeke said, Earl, so good to see you. And they were hugging each other. Louise sat in the car, if the story's right. She was fuming. She wanted to get on down the road. And so Earl and Zeke are talking, and Earl says, Zeke, where's Wiley? And he said, he's up at the house. And Earl says, well, call him. I want to see him too. So Zeke got on the phone and called up the house, and he said, Wiley, is that you? And Wiley, he said, uh-huh. And Earl's listening to all this. He said, you're not going to believe who's down here at the garage. It's Earl Scruggs. Earl and Louise got off the interstate, come to see us. What? Are you sure? Okay, I'll tell him. And he hung up. And Earl said, what did he say? And Zeke said, he said he's too tired. Is that true? Earl Scruggs went out of his way to see him, and he's too tired.
He wasn't tired, he was tarred.
One of the most famous gatherings in Nashville every January is when your birthday, right?
Yeah.
And Louise and Earl would have these big birthday parties turned into all-night picking sessions. Everybody would go over there. Cheryl, what were you telling me about one of their
it was
birthday
the first
parties?
First year I got to go, and we had been invited before, and you know, I'm shy that it's hard for me to do that kind of stuff, and then when I do, I always have a great time. And Earl and Louise were at the Opry at the Ryman. Might have been the first winter we moved back, and so I said, yeah, I'm going to come. And Louise was talking about getting ready for it because it was that Sunday night. She said, I've been so busy getting the house ready, and said my niece has been helping me get all the food ready, and said she's after me to take my Christmas decorations down. She said, no, I want to leave them up till after the party. And her niece says, you really should take them down, Aunt Louise. Said, nobody leaves their Christmas decorations up that late except Graceland for Elvis. She said, you know what I told her? And I said, what? She said, I said, well, Earl is my Elvis, and I'm leaving him up. And I just, that speaks volumes. It was hilarious. She was so dry, but that's the way she was about Earl.
Yes, she certainly was. Billy Grammer, you said some of the first work you did in Nashville, you did some work with Lester and Earl?
The very first trip, I signed with the Opry on February the 27th of '59, and right out of the chute, I had 4 dates booked in Mississippi, Meridian and Laurel and I think Jackson, and I forget what the other one was. And Lester says, why don't you ride with us? I didn't have a band formed at anything. So I got on the bus and rode with them, and I got acquainted with Earl and all the Foggy Mountain boys. And they found out that I came from coal mining country. All my people were farmers and coal miners. My dad was 36 years in the mines, deep shaft mines, and we had a little thing going together. Well, the first show that I did on the Opry was with Roy Acuff, but the second show I did was with Earl and Lester, and I did Gotta Travel On, which was the thing, you know, and then I was burning, and I could do it then. I was burning under the double eagle up, just burning it up. And Lester is walking around me with a capo, coming around trying to put a capo on my neck. Earl was getting in between him and me and keeping him away from me. Now that's the kind of, I don't know whether you remember that, Earl. Yeah, he had a capo. He had one of them old spring capos, you know, and he'd walk around there, and I'd turn and Earl would kind of get over here, you know. Had fun. Hey, they're fun people.
Yeah.
Fun people, and I loved them then. Got to love them then and love them still.
Some of those old Flat and Scruggs television shows have been released in recent years on DVD.
I think Gary knows more about that, don't you, Gary? He may not be in here. Yeah, there's, I want to say five or six, and then scheduled for some more later on.
You know, Earl's playing has influenced so many people as far as playing all around the country, and young people even now. There's many young kids that I see that are playing, and it's amazing the influence that you've had on them. I remember my dad learned to play banjo from listening to you on the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
And now my mom and I sang really high, and he didn't know that you had a capo on.
Oh, boy.
So my dad, to this day, he tuned his banjo to A.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And because of you, and he did, because he said he couldn't see you, he did not know that you normally tuned it to G. And I didn't know that a banjo player normally tuned it to G till for many years later, too.
Well, I was forced into it, I guess. When I knew I was going with Monroe, most of his tunes were in B flat or B natural, which is the
Bluegrass C.
Yeah, so you couldn't run the strings up 4 frets, you know, so I had to do something.
Yeah.
Earl, you probably, oh, I'm sorry, George.
Yeah, I didn't want to horn in again, but I just remembered my favorite Lester and Earl story. And I always wondered if it's true, but somebody told me y'all were in a truck stop late at night, somewhere out on the road, and Lester and Earl came in and sat down, and they were studying the menu, and the waitress came over, and they were looking at the menu, and the waitress said, "You boys musicians?" And without even looking up or anything, I think Lester said, "You got that right, darling. How did you know?" And she said, "Well, I seen you come in here in the front door and you look kind of shiftless and useless. I figured you must be musicians." And so, without looking up, according to the story, Lester said, "You got that right, darling. And what instrument do you play?"
Yeah, out 100 Highway, we'd go to Jackson and Tupelo to do shows down there.
That's pretty witty, isn't it?
Yeah, she looked up and saw the bus, and it's lettered big as that big out there. Yeah. She said, "You all are magicians, aren't you?"
Magicians.
I said, I saw her reading the bus, and I said, "How could you tell?" I said, "They look stupid to me." And I said, "What instrument do you play?" She went ahead chewing her chewing gum, never acted like she...
It went right over her head, probably.
86 years young, you're still on the road some, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Get me a fast walking stick and I can keep up with that.
Thank you for coming here and sitting in this
I've
circle
enjoyed
today.
it.
Earl Scruggs.
Sharon had her hand up, and I was just going to say.
I was just going to tell you, we lived in Arkansas for 9 years before we moved to Tennessee. And, of course, we were playing music around the house and playing bluegrass music. And we met a banjo player from Oklahoma. He came over and found Daddy. He said, "I heard there's a man over here plays bluegrass." And there weren't very many of them out there. And you're talking earlier about how influential Earl has been, and everybody's been touched by the music that he's played. Well, this guy had learned to play the banjo. Now, by the time we met him, he was playing with 3-finger picks. But he said, "I sat and tried to do what he was doing with a flat pick." He said, "I thought that's what he was doing because all he heard was what came over the radio on Saturday night, you know?" And I've heard other people say the same thing, that it meant, you know, it was so captivating to them. They wanted to learn to do it, and they could not figure out how he was doing it. And when he finally saw a picture of him with picks on 3 fingers. He went, "Oh my goodness." And he said, "It set me free."
Bill Sonny Osborne of the Osborne Brothers was telling me about the first night Earl was on the Opry, and he said, "I would have bet you any kind of money that it was some kind of overdub. Nobody could play like that, just one banjo, one player."
Yeah.
And he said, we all just stood there in amazement when Earl played on the Opry the first time. It was like all that music was coming out of one banjo. And I mean, it was an amazing thing.
It has been for years, and it still does.
The tone that he got out of his banjo and the class that he had, you know, with his picking and all, is just it's unmatched today, really.
Amen.
I worked with Chubby Wise a lot after, you know, and he used to say the same thing about Earl. He just said it's unbelievable when he first heard him.
That Chubby Wise was one great fiddle player.
Chubby and I worked together quite a bit, off and on
Yeah,
through the years.
he's one of the best fiddle players I at the time that I had ever heard. Yeah, yeah. He is from down North Florida.
Yep.
He used to play Gillies all the time. Before I ever got a chance to go on the road, we'd book people into Gillies, and I'd just like to go out and smell the fumes from the bus and dream about one day when I could, you know.
I ran that album that he did. He got popular down there.
Yeah. He played there all the time. I said, why are they booking this Chubby Wise? Who is he? And I didn't realize who he was, you know, until later.
Roy Stone of Stoneway Records called me down, and I ran that album, and he got real popular with his fiddle down there, see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Him and Floyd Tillman played Gillies a lot.
Yeah, I love Floyd.
Chubby was, I just remember I always had a smile on his face.
You bet you.
You know, the first time I ever played Las Vegas, it was me and my band back in Chubby Wise at the Golden Nugget.
Awesome.
And I'll tell you what, Chubby Wise was a fiddle player, and I've heard a lot of them, and I love a good fiddle. Anything that Chubby played, any amp he plugged into, I don't care where he was,
That's right.
it sounded great.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
Didn't
right.
make no difference.
I used to like to hear him play a tune in B flat on the fiddle.
He'd play Lee Highway Swing like nobody else could.
Yeah, and he never used his little finger. Just those 3 fingers, and it'd reach way down there, and that's why he gets a lot of those long slides
Yeah.
with his ring finger.
He used to tell me, he said, Gene said, I play like this. He said, if I'm playing a song, he said, I play the first part of it the way it goes. Yeah. And he said, the next part of it, I play it the way I want to. And he did know how to play it.
Yeah, he was great.
Chubby's name wasn't on it, but wasn't he one of the co-writers with Erwin Rouse of the Orange Blossom Special?
He was the main writer.
He was the main writer?
That's right, and just out of something, it got out of hand, and he never took care of his business. He told me that story, and he never had any fault against Irvin and Rouse, you know. Before Irvin died, he admitted that Chubby was the writer of that.
Yeah, they came out of North Carolina, the Rouse brothers did, from over on the East Coast.
Chubby was driving a cab down in Florida and working part-time, see, at that time. Had that together.
Talk about a lot of legends in this room, a lot of memories all over this circle. The lady sitting right behind Earl over there, where every time I look at you, I can't help it. I see your mama, Dottie West's daughter.
Well, thank
Shelley
you.
West. You said sometimes you get the feeling that the audience is watching you and seeing Dottie.
I do. I can see it in their eyes, especially if I'm, you know, singing one of her songs. You know, I'll be looking, and then I'm like, you're not really looking at me, are you? You know, you're seeing Dottie. You know, I think because we do look some alike, and just the sound, you know, it's just genetics. You girls know how the genetics carry, so.
Well, you've had your own career, of course, with hit records and all on your own. But you still, when you perform, you do a certain segment of your show of Dottie's music?
I do. I always have, and you know, it's I've not always had a long repertoire of songs anyway, so it's always really helped to make a show. And I usually do "Here Comes My Baby," "Country Sunshine." Larry Butler's nodding his head.
Oh, yeah.
Larry, you produced Dottie and Kenny. in their early duet.
Two Fools Collide.
Every Time Two Fools Collide. I had the pleasure of singing that with Mark Gray on, one of the Nashville Now type shows. And so those, and I've got to sing Lesson in Leaving on the show. I actually learned the bass part one time. And my brothers and I recorded it downstairs in the studio. And I was John Conley's bass player for a short time. I don't know if he remembers.
Yeah, I do.
Do you remember?
Wasn't it out west? Weren't we out in California or something?
We were in Porterville, where David Frizzell owned the club there.
Right.
And I loved your album. It was that first big album you had, and I knew every song on it and knew how to play it. And I didn't know much bass, but I could, fake it. Anyway, and so he came that night, and I played, yes, and sang harmonies.
I'd forgotten that. That's great, yeah. I remember
You didn't fire her, did you big dummy?
Who knew?
She really takes after her mama.
Is that what her mama would
That's
be doing?
exactly what her
She
mama
was the
did.
original cougar, baby.
We've talked a good bit this week about the fact that the family reunion shows are seen over in the United Kingdom now, in England and Ireland and Scotland and places, and we talked to George Hamilton a little bit about that. You mentioned something to me during one of the breaks that we have not touched on. It's been a big part of your career, and that's your connection with the Canadian country music scene. You were, I think, the first Nashville artist to really concentrate on Canada. I know you were the first, at least I think you were, to record any songs written by Gordon Lightfoot and other people from up there.
I've had a long-standing love affair with Canadian music. And we've recorded 5 albums of all Canadian material. I did a little TV series up there for a while. But it's all because of Gordon Lightfoot. Gordon Lightfoot introduced me to Canadian folk country music. And I know your husband had a lot to do with that, because in the early 60s, RCA used to have a division called folk country, and they used to put little stickers on Bobby Bear's albums and mine and Waylon, and there were probably
It's one
others.
of my favorite albums.
Kind of focusing on a new type of music that was coming in from Canada. And I think it had a great influence on people like Chris Christopherson, Tom T. Hall, the ones who started writing kind of folksy story songs. And Gordon Lightfoot made me aware of people like Joni Mitchell, Leonard Cohen, and of course Ian Tyson. I had known him for a while. But they've got something very distinctive, and I know a lot of y'all have noticed it in Canada. Their music's kind of different, sort of folksy. And in the early 60s, when we were doing mostly, honky-tonk songs and truck driving songs and cheating, slipping around, whatever you want to call it, they were into kind of delving into folk music a lot up there, and it was interesting to me. So I met Gordon. He came down to Nashville, and we recorded a couple of his tunes over at RCA. He played guitar on a couple of them. And I was talking to him, and I said, Gordon, what is it about your music? It's different from ours down here in Nashville. It's kind of unique. And he said, well, don't you know why? And I said, no, why? Jesse was asking me a minute ago about what it was about that, and I started to tell her. He said, we're 100 years younger than you. And I said, I beg your pardon? He said, Canada is 100 years younger than the United States. And so we're 100 years closer to the folk song ballad traditions of Scotland and Ireland and England and Europe. And I never thought of that. But Canada's a British Commonwealth country, and being 100 years younger, they're much closer to the troubadours and the minstrels than we are. Our music has had time to evolve and become something very American. So I tip my hat to Gordon Lightfoot. He's one of the greatest songwriters and singers that ever lived, and he sure turned me on to Canada. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing red and white today. I guess that's appropriate. Of course, this came from a Pizza Hut.
Gordon told me that the best interview he ever did was with you. You interviewed him, didn't you? On
He
your
came
radio
to Nashville,
show.
yeah, a couple of years ago.
He rarely does interviews. I was surprised.
He was very kind.
And
yeah.
he was with you for an hour or so?
Yeah.
I
Wonderful
did the
man,
same-
very, very talented.
I did the same thing. One of the best interviews I ever did. This was that gentleman over there looking at me. That was great. I'll
What
never
a joy
forget
that was. Earl and Louise opened up their home, and I went over there with a radio crew from satellite radio, and we sat there for, I guess, 2 hours. And Randy was there, your son Randy.
Yeah.
And you picked the banjo, and he picked the guitar, and we talked to Louise
the
about all the
best
business
lineup.
and all that she had handled for you. It was a
Best
great
lineup.
afternoon.
Best lineup of questions ever around.
Well, bless your heart.
I'll never
Thank you.
forget that. Anyway, I hate to butt in, but I
No,
just
thank
had
you.
to
That's
say it.
very kind. I appreciate that. Well, most everybody in this room, I guested on my radio show at one time or another, and I thank you because y'all were the ones that made it so successful that they took it off.
Bill, it's you've been so complimentary to all of us. It's good to hear you getting compliments.
Yeah.
When we were signing posters out there, somebody said, "What an incredible job you're doing."
Oh, yeah.
It's just fun to be here with all my friends.
I mean, you really are.
I've done a whole bunch of interviews, and you even asked me about some stuff that nobody else has ever asked me about, that meant a lot to me at the time.
But most importantly, I don't know if y'all knew this or not, and he didn't tell me, somebody from BMI did, I think. Bill Anderson is the most recorded songwriter in the history of country music. He's written more songs.
Well, nearly everybody in this room's recorded one of my songs, so thank you very much. I want to go over here and talk to Dan Tyminski for a little while because Dan has not been here with us in the circle before. You've been sitting over there soaking some of this stuff up, son. I've been watching you.
This is my very first time. I couldn't be happier to be here. I would have bought a ticket to this if I could have.
If we'd known that, we'd have sold you one. First time I ever knew of you, and I guess most of us, you were a part of Alison Krause's Union Station group for
indeed.
how many years?
I've been with Allison now for, I think it's going on 17 years.
So you're considering yourself still as a part of that group?
We are in the studio, still at it, doing another record and getting ready to hit the road, soon as we can finish that up this year.
But you do some things on your own too, right?
I have been doing a few things on my own. I've put together a band of guys. For lack of a better name, the Dan Tyminski Band, and we've toured for a couple of years. But Union Station is still what I consider my gig.
Well, for people who don't know, and I'm sure most everybody does, the great movie "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," which starred the Whites and some guy named George Clooney.
Thank you, Bill.
I owe Buck White one after calling him Buck Trent. I'm trying to get back on his good side.
Thanks, Jack.
Touche. Dan Tyminski is probably the only guy in the world that has ever been the voice of George Clooney. How did that all come about?
Oh, wow. The Coen brothers wanted to get some music in this film, and they approached Allison and Union Station to come and audition to do some of the music. And at that point, they had yet to cast George's voice. They knew that Clooney was going to sing in the movie, but they wanted to get someone to do the part. And my manager just happened to mention while we were in there, auditioning for, Union Station, that I might be a candidate for that part. And they said, would you like to, try out to be George Clooney's voice? And I thought, I couldn't see it. I said, George Clooney's voice? I said, yeah, of course. And went back the next day to an audition. And it seemed to go pretty well. They were all, kind of nodding like it looked like I was going to get it. And I was very excited, of course. Called home to tell my wife that I was going to do this voiceover. And my wife, was very excited. She said, "Oh, Dan, a voiceover, that's great. What is that?" And, I explained, in this case, when you went to the theater, you'd be looking at George Clooney, you know, up on the big screen, but you'd be hearing my voice coming out. She said, "That's my fantasy."
That's great.
And sure enough, it all came to be, and I got to I got to sing that song.
Had you ever sung "Man of Constant Sorrow" before?
No, I can't say that I have. I mean, I'd been familiar with the song. I know that the Stanley Brothers had a version recorded in the 50s and the 60s. I mean, they recorded it every decade, you know, from I think the 40s or 50s on to today. You know, had several versions. None of them quite like the version that we had. They were very specific in how they wanted it to sound. They gave me a bunch of guidelines that of how it would be in the movie. That they said you're hungry, you just sold your soul to the devil, you just stole a chicken, and you're about to sing in a can. And if you're really singing this can well, you're going to make $50. That's like thousands of dollars today. You know, they said, you're devil possessed. You stole a chicken. You're singing in a can. Go. And I really didn't know where to go with that. And we experimented with a few different ideas, and finally landed on the version that we recorded.
Did you ever get to meet George Clooney?
Indeed, yeah. I got to be in the movie and meet Clooney, and of course told him the story of what my wife said, which he thought was great. And then at a premiere in New York City, he actually went and embarrassed her on the red carpet in front of a bunch of cameras and kind of leaned over and said, "I heard what you said." And she just turned 5 shades of red and then looked at me with that look that I knew I was way in trouble. She was smiling, but I knew deep down, I was like, oh boy.
What song did you audition with?
I actually auditioned with that song.
Oh, really?
But the version that I auditioned with was about 5 keys higher, much slower, much different than we ended up doing it. They said, I couldn't believe I got the part, because in my mind I didn't really see that my voice would have necessarily matched Clooney's, and but they could see it, and then of course George did such a great job how he lip synced it. I mean, he convinced the entire country that it was him doing it, and he never got to see any of it being recorded or anything like that. He just had that's why he does what he does. He's just he actually wanted to sing the song. I got to record the song with George. While we were doing the shoot, he at that point still kind of had it in his mind that he wanted to sing the song, maybe. So we booked a day in a studio, and I went to record with him. And Clooney can sing. He actually does have a decent voice. He can sing, and we recorded the song. Yeah, I played guitar, and he sang the song once through, and he said, "No, I need to try it one more time." And I played it again, and he sang about half of it, and he stopped, and he said, "Kick it off one more time." And I kicked it off again, and he sang like 2 lines of it, and then he stopped, and he took his headphones off, and he walked out of the studio, and he said, "I'm going to make you a deal." He says, "This is a day off. How about I act, you sing?" and I got to do it.
And that's how you became a soggy bottom
That
boy.
is how my bottom got soggy, yes.
You got to do it for us.
I would be happy to do it.
Hey, boy.
I have to unplug this. I've been practicing, so
Did good.
You got all of our attention.
Want me to come up and play banjo, will you?
I wish so, please. I need some. I would love if you would all sing it along. Everyone here could have a soggy bottom if they wished.
In constant sorrow all through his day. Well, I am a man of constant sorrow. Well, I've seen trouble all my day. Well, I bid farewell to old Kentucky, the place where I was born and raised. The place where I was born and raised. 36 long years I've been in trouble, but no pleasure here on earth I found. For in this world I'm bound to ramble. I have no friends to help me down. Well, he has no friends to help him down. Well, it's fare thee well, my whole true lover. I never expect to see you again, for I'm bound to ride that northern railroad. Perhaps I'll die upon this train. Perhaps he'll die upon this train. Then you can bury me in some deep valley for many years where I may lay. Well, then you may learn to love another whilst I am sleeping in my grave. Whilst he is sleeping in his grave. Well, maybe your friends think I'm just a stranger. My face you never will see no more. But there is one promise that is given. I meet you on God's golden shore. Well, he'll meet you on God's golden shore.
Don't let him stop, man.
All right.
We got time for another one.
Oh, that's great. Good sounding guitar. Didn't I hear you telling somebody some kind of story about that guitar?
You know what? I'm very, very proud of this guitar. This is a new Martin guitar. It's actually a Dan Tyminski model. I got to get together with the folks at Martin Guitar and help design a guitar. It blew me away. It's actually one of the things that I am most proud of. This is I have always, of course, if you play bluegrass music, you know you have to have a Martin.
Is
Just
there an
kinda-
800 number where you can call?
It is.
He hadn't been here yet.
There's an 800 number somewhere, I'm sure. But you know, I like the pre-war Martins they made. You know, the models that I like were from 1934 to 1946. They were just doing it right for whatever reason, and I got to kind of take the things that I liked out of the different models, the different years, and combine them for one, and got my little signature and a little sticker in there. It's very, very pretty. Yes.
I bet that made your bottom soggy, didn't it?
That was too easy.
Nobody else was going to use it. I'm using it.
Okay, I guess we can try one more.
But he's got a strange little contraption there on the.
Yeah, I'm using some strange gadgetry to so we can all hear it. I guess we'll try one more old bluegrass song. We didn't really run the whole song, but it's how hard can it be, you know? I'll sing a little bit, I'll pick a little bit, I'll sing, I'll pick, we'll all play, and then, you know, I'll do this right at the end, and we'll just...
Rehearsal.
Well, I was born down in the Southland.
It's
a good thing. It's a good thing.
That's Jimmy Martin.
About that deal with the devil.
20 some odd years ago. I ran away for the first time. When I was only 4 years old, I'm a freeborn man. Well, my home is on my back. Well, I know every inch of the highway, every foot of back road, every mile of railroad track. Up it. This is my favorite verse, by the way. Well, I got me a Martin guitar, and I carry an old tote sack. Well, I honked it about 200 times, but I always got it back, and I'm a freeborn man. My home is on my back. Well, I know every inch of the highway, every foot of back road, every mile of railroad track. Cincinnati, another woman in San Antonio. Well, I always loved the girl next door, but any place is home, I'm a freeborn man. Well, my home is on my back. Well, I know every inch of the highway, every foot of back road, every mile of railroad track. You may not like my song, you may not like the way I walk, but you like the way I'm gone. I'm a freeborn man. Well, my home is on my back. Well, I know every inch of the highway, every foot of back road, every mile of railroad track. I'm a freeborn man. Well, my home is on my back. Well, I know every inch of the highway, every foot of back road, every mile of railroad track. Thank you.
Dan Tyminski. Oh, man.
My goodness.
How good can it get? Dan, that's terrific, man. Thank you. Hey, thank you for being
Dan,
here.
I have a question. Who teaches all the harmony on y'all's records?
Wow, all the harmony on our records. That's
great.
That's a good question. I'm gonna have to plug back in. You know, I'm not a very schooled harmony singer. I don't know. Whenever I need.
Well, boy, you sing it right.
Well, no, the last time I needed some good harmony singing for any record that I was working on, I actually asked Sharon and Cheryl White to come in and sing some background vocals. On the last record that we did, they were nice enough to come in and sing some of the prettiest background vocals you could ever want. But harmony singing is just you get three people singing. If it sounds good, it's right. I don't have a really sophisticated way to
say, this is
Speaking
how it's
mainly of
done.
Allison, some of the things that she does and some of the harmonies that y'all get are, a little bit unusual and different.
We just, trial and error. We try to experiment with everything. Yeah, we will try to exhaust every way we can try something just to see if, we'll throw out any idea we can come up with. And then after everybody, throws out their ideas, we do it exactly how Allison wants.
There's a lot said about family harmony
Yeah.
and all that, and that's true that there's a lot to be said for that, but I don't think there's any three people that really sound any greater and closer together than Allison and Dan and Ron Block.
Yeah, that's right.
It is.
Thanks.
And no matter which way you stack the harmonies, I mean, we've heard it always. And
Well,
it's
I will have to, honestly, I'll credit Allison mostly with it. I mean, Allison is one of the things, one of the things that she loves about music, on top of finding songs, is arranging and working up the different harmony stuff. So she easily has probably the biggest overall picture of how she wants to hear the harmonies, but we try it every way we can and try to come up with something that's nice.
Some of it is so great.
Yeah.
Golly.
You look around this room, and there's so many different styles of music represented here. I mean, there's no two people here are alike. Dan, your music is incredible, and I look over your shoulder, and I see B.J. Thomas sitting up there.
Can you still
and his
see me?
music is his own style, and it's incredible as well.
Thank you, Bill.
You said you had a funny story or a story to tell me about going over to Burt Bacharach's house before you
well.
recorded Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head.
Yeah, you're talking about Raindrops, and I was with Scepter Records, and Burt and Hal owned half of the label, and of course Dionne Warwick was their mainstay, and so we'd been after him ever since I had Lonesome. And by the way, that reminds me, I've got a personal connection with almost every person in this room. These guys who worked on my records, even Mr. Grammer there played on some of my records. I cut my first song in Nashville in 1964.
Yeah, I did it.
I was 8. And I've been talking to Bill and being interviewed by Bill, since I began, and so I'm still trying to figure out why he asked me about James Brown yesterday. But anyway,
somebody told me to.
somebody told you to. But so finally, we stayed on Burt, and I kind of got in. My number came up, and that always kind of been a story where. I always heard that he wrote Raindrops with Bob Dylan in mind, and sounds like Bob Dylan to me. And I'd heard he had pitched it to Ray Stevens. And of course, I didn't believe that because I thought, you'd have to be an idiot to turn down any Burt Bacharach song, Hal Davis song, especially in a Paul Newman movie. But as it turned out, it was true because I was telling this story once, and or some other aspect of it, and. Guy tapped on my shoulder, and I looked around, and it was Chet Atkins, and he said, "I did." So he turned it down because Burt came in and played it for him, and I don't know, they just didn't dig Burt's mojo or something, and So anyway, my number came up, and I got the tape of Raindrops and the various other songs, and I did the best I could to learn them, and that's how we kind of butted heads at the beginning because he wanted me to learn how to read music, and I said I didn't want to. Learn how to read music, it might mess me up. That's how dumb I was, and still am. But anyway, I learned the songs best I could, and I flew out, me and the Redhead, me and Gloria, and we flew out to California, and they gave me this address. They said, go out to Mulholland Drive. And have you ever known anybody that had gone out to Mulholland Drive? Anyway, so I said, okay, well, I took a taxi out there. Gloria didn't go with me. And I took it out, and they said, you'll go out there at a certain address, and you'll find a button, and you push the button there by the gate, and they'll come and let you in. So, by the time I got there, and just an aside to this is I had laryngitis at the time. I had just finished a couple of weeks in the Midwest, and back in those days, I kind of burned the candle at both ends, and it couldn't be these cigarettes or all this dope, could it? But anyway. So it's not it, is it? No, it couldn't be that. I asked Jimmy, and he said, no, that's not. But anyway, so I'm out there, and I'm looking for this button, and I can't find the button, and so it's all brick to me, and so I finally got over to a little corner there, and I did find a button, and I pushed the button, and the garage door came up. And, I'm standing there with some great-looking cars in there, too. And I'm standing there, and Angie Dickinson opens up the door. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's what I said. Angie Dickinson opened up the door, and, she really was looking pretty good. And I think, I don't know, I don't really remember. But then she said, yeah, easy now. Is Gloria here? Yes. And she said, can I help you? Of course, if this happened today, they just shot me and, called the police, somebody raising up their garage door. But she said, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm here to rehearse with Bert and on some songs. And she turned around and she said, Bert, your little friend is here. And that was the punchline pretty much right there. That was pretty much the funny part. Bert and I, we kind of, we didn't get along really great. And after years went by, I realized, of course, now we're buddies, and I realized that, he's just one of the classiest, greatest composers of all time. But back then, I was kind of this punk from Houston, Gene, and he wasn't. He was a very sophisticated guy, and but he did admit to me years later that he thought my version was the best. And of course, I had his first gold record, and they'd had a bunch of hits on Dion, but this was the first one that went gold. And I understand that Raindrops is his favorite song of all the songs he's written. He's been quoted.
Well, now the logical segue would be for you to sing Raindrops, but that's not what it says on the sheet.
That's not what it says. But everybody's tired of raindrops anyway, except me. But I love Raindrops. I love the whole experience. I got through the soundtrack deal, and of course Bert was furious at me because the guy from 20th Century came up to me and says. He said, BJ, that's really a good idea. You're trying to sound like Paul Newman singing. And I went, yeah, and so I was pretty ragged. But we did recut it about 8 weeks later, and that's when he had done the tag, and I kind of put that little Buddy Holly thing on the end, and that's been the all-time, greatest thing that happened to me other than I'm So Lonesome. And in '64, I cut Billy and Sue here. And, I've worked with most of the producers I worked with saw me as country. And, of course, now, Billboard did a survey of country songs, and they said Raindrops was the 5th biggest country song of all time. So that's where we are now. That's how far we've come, Earl. But anyway, and they've all the guys I worked with, all the producers, they all saw me as country. Chips and of course I worked with the legendary Pete Drake, and he was just my heart, that guy, and he saw me as country, and he told me, he said, I said, I don't know if I should, because the first country hit I had was Wrong Song, and that was '75 after I'd been singing for years. And I said, well, I don't know if I should try to go country, because I'd just been involved in gospel. And I was just out of nowhere. I had the first platinum albums in gospel music history. It was a real surprise, and all of a sudden I was a big gospel singer. And even though that stuff came from my heart, I didn't. That really wasn't what I wanted to do. Was just be a religious singer. And so Pete, I cut my first country album with Larry. And we cut some really good stuff, but I think people they weren't quite ready. And we cut some really good stuff. And then I went in with Pete, and Pete said, BJ, you don't have to worry about what you do, because people who are country think you're country, and people who are gospel think you're gospel. And he said, people who are pop think you're pop. And that's been my luckiest thing is I grew up with top 40 radio. I had no idea that Abilene was a country song. It was a huge pop record to me, the #1 pop record as far as I can remember. And, so I just am kind of a child of the top 40 radio. And, I've just been very, very fortunate. And one of the things that are really important to me is that I am accepted in a way by you guys. That means a lot to me. And I've got a lot of love here for everybody in this room. And I would have been right with Dan there. I'd have paid good money to see the Vince Gill sing that thing he just sang. And that was the absolute most wonderful thing I've ever seen in my career and in my life. So I just feel like this is the place I ought to be right here.
Sing a song for us.
Now, where were we? What am I going to do? I cut this song with Chip Spoman. See, hold it for me, honey. Let me stand up here because
This one's got to have a high note in it.
No, it doesn't have any high notes, but I just have a hard time singing sitting down. And especially at my age. I'm in road years, I'm 605 years old. This is a song I cut. It was another thing, it was at the end of an album with Chips and the American Studio Group. And, we didn't know if we had a hit. And as it turned out, we did have a couple of little hits on there. But Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil sent me 2 songs. This song I'm about to do, and then the one I should have done. They sent me Here You Come Again. And Chips told me to pick which song, and so this is the one I picked. I just can't help believing when she smiles up soft and gentle with a trace of misty morning and a promise of tomorrow in her eyes. And I just can't help believing when she's lying close beside me and my heart beats with the rhythm of a sigh. This time the girl is gonna stay. This time the girl is gonna stay for more than just a day. And I just can't help believing when she slips her hand in my hand, and it feels so small and helpless that my fingers fold around it like a glove. And I just can't help believing when she's whispering her magic and her tears are shining honey sweet with love. This time the girl is gonna stay. This time the girl is gonna stay for more than just a day. Than just a day.
I just can't help believing. I just can't help believing. No, I just can't help believing.
Two kinds of music, good and bad, and that's good. That's really good.